Morning Blues for Friday the 10th of January 2025. We reached nearly the end of the weekend. Chelsea returning to action tomorrow in the FA Cup against Morecambe. I'm going to give you my team selector for that game. The second, I believe it is, lose track of time, the second of 2025, the first home game of 2025. It's always an interesting one, the FA Cup third round, because it's a hard one to predict team-wise, because naturally and rightfully we expect a lot of rotation, but I think there's some intrigue to who we could see in that starting 11 for Enzo Maresca, and Chelsea needing to win a game that they're obviously expected to win, but to get some positivity after a difficult run. In today's Morning Blues, we're going to be looking at Liam Delap, a player who has been heavily linked to Chelsea, and looking at some of his numbers and why I think this still is a high possibility this year. We're also going to look at the wide players. That's another area that has been talked about this week in terms of some of the targets and how also that links into the McCallum Mudryk potential ban and how Chelsea could react. I also want to look at a valid criticism of Chelsea's wide players so far this year in terms of productivity, and actually looking at the numbers. They're not that impressive, or at least they are ones that should be improved if Chelsea are going to go to the next level. And then also Carney Chukwuemeka, no surprise he's being linked with some very good clubs. He's also been linked with Strasbourg, but I'll tell you why I don't think that's going to come to fruition this month. So we'll dive into that. Thank you as well this week for your support on Morning Blues. Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays. It's been great to get it off the ground. Obviously, some things still to work out with the show. Please do give me your feedback, but it's been great to see people react to the show and very much engage with it, whether they're listening to it on the podcast or watching it on YouTube. The first thing I have to speak about, and I'm happy to speak about and proud to speak about, is Chelsea doing something that yesterday that I think makes me proud to be a Chelsea fan and make me feel like really good about the club in a way I haven't felt for some time. And it's to do with actually a mate of mine, Rodney, who has sadly been battling against MMD for a long period of time now. And we were able to get his name and photo and a message in the Fulham programme, which was really lovely to see, a great Christmas present. But also him getting to go to Cobham yesterday. You may have seen the photos on Chelsea's social media, and he was able to meet basically the whole squad, it felt like, and it was wonderful to see the pictures. Also Adam, who's a lovely guy and someone as well I've known for both him and Rodney I've known for about 10 years and kind of knowing them and, you know, meeting before Chelsea games, home and away. And Adam getting that experience too, who's been looking after Rodney, taking him to Chelsea games. And lovely to also hear how wonderful the club and the players specifically treated Rodney. It's just one of those things. It's a lovely story. And, you know, I sit here and we talk seriously about Chelsea and we talk about, you know, things they could be doing better, things they're doing wrong. But this is one of those just great stories that I think me and all of my Chelsea mates were really happy and emotional to see. So I just want to point that out because it's a sign that the club, you know, does have that heart and appreciation for supporters, especially those going through a really difficult time. So I want to say thank you and up the Chelsea and you know, Rodney, I think it was special to see for him to meet all the players and get to experience something really, really memorable at a difficult time. So I want to say thank you to Chelsea for that. But let's jump into Liam Delap. Is a name that's been linked from Ipswich for a long period of time. Obviously, he had a really good game against us at the end of December. Matt Law was on the London is Blue pod and he had a lot of comments and quotes about Chelsea's transfer window. As I always say, listen to those pods, they're really informative. There's a lot of information. One of the things, I think probably the most notable thing he said was in regards to Liam Delap, and he effectively just said, have an eye on Liam Delap. I would suggest a heavy one. Now, I don't think, like, my mind on why I think Chelsea will sign Liam Delap is a pretty simple one. And it's one that you can track just based on Chelsea's own transfer business and the type of players they have signed based on their previous history and based on the history of one of our sporting directors or one of our kind of transfer recruitment people. And that is obviously Joe Shields and the involvement he has had and the links we have had to previous Manchester City players is the most simple way I can put it. Tosin Adarabioyo, Romeo Lavia, Cole Palmer is obviously the shining example within this. Liam Delap is another one who, you know, left City early, has gone, made a career for himself very quickly, and has done incredibly well at Ipswich. Like, looking at his numbers, it is hard to argue against how impressive these are when you factor in who he's playing for. A team that are likely going to be relegated back to the Championship have, Chelsea, beating Chelsea at home was their first home league win of the season, which is depressing for Chelsea, but kind of shows you how much of a struggle it's been for Kieran McKenna. He has scored 8 goals, which is only one less than Nicholas Jackson, a player who I've been highly praising recently and defending. 2 assists, 18 starts, 19 overall, nearly 1,500 minutes this season in the Premier League. His first full season in the Premier League. In terms of goals and kind of XG, he's exceeding it by about 2. His XG so far in the Premier League this season is about just over 6. XG on target, also exceeding that. That's about 7.6. In terms of shots on target, 17 so far this year. There's a physical prowess to him as well. When you look at kind of his overall numbers, in terms of the way he's 57% aerial duels won. We saw it firsthand at Chelsea, how he can be a really real focal point even when he's kind of being outnumbered, how he can hold up the ball, how he can link play. He's also got a vicious shot on him as well. That's something people have pointed out. He's someone, when he does get his shot away and gets it accurate, it's difficult to stop. So you add all those things together, the actual output of him this season, the Manchester City links, also the age profile of him matches what Chelsea have been doing. And Matt Law also said that he expects that Chelsea, more so in the summer, but that could materialise this month. Why it could materialise this month, I'll say that in a sec. But just in terms of Chelsea actually going out there and signing real competition for Nicholas Jackson. And because Chelsea are very unlikely to sign an older centre-forward like they may have used to for a rotational option, I just think Delap kind of ticks a lot of boxes in the way Chelsea have profiled players. And because Ipswich, I still think, despite some, good moments under McKenna this year, I think McKenna is a very good young coach. I still think the likelihood is they'll be dragged into the relegation. I think based on what I've seen so far this year, if they play out the same, form for the rest of the season, it may change. Chelsea, of course, are in a really strong bargaining position. We saw this when, Leeds went down, some players, and it's natural when you get relegated, your best players are likely going to be used to make up the loss of Premier League money. That's understandable. And I think Delap, with this impressive tally, and also when you factor in, it's easy to counteract it and go, he doesn't have tons of Premier League minutes. But I mean, Chelsea signed Jackson without a ton of La Liga minutes. So the idea Chelsea wouldn't move for a player because they don't have a ton of experience, it is kind of that's a very different Chelsea age. Chelsea have become accustomed to signing players without tons of senior minutes. And as the most extreme case of Cole Palmer, you could have used that argument against signing Cole Palmer. I think we kind of did at the time. And let's see how that, we've seen how that's turned out. So that isn't always a barometer for not signing someone. So I think that Liam Delap for me kind of feels like quite an obvious one, just simply because of those factors. And I think the fact he's Premier League, proven or Premier League experience point as well, I think makes him a suitable option for Chelsea, especially as a rotational figure too. So I think all of those things just add up to me to kind of think in this year, whether it's January or the summer more likely. The reason it could happen in January is if Chelsea sell an attacker. And that attacker would most likely be Christopher Nkunku. However, I mean, the PSG talk that was brought up this week was, kind of quickly shot down. So that you have to factor that in as well. But I want to hear your thoughts. I mean, would Liam Delap be... Because he fits the idea of a rotational option who I don't think comes in and instantly as a starter. I don't. I think, he'd be competing with Jackson, but I think he'd be strong competition for Jackson. And then really you've got 2 players there at a young age who could develop into a really ferocious centre-forward pairing who then gives you a variety of options, because he is slightly different to Nicholas Jackson. However, I think, maybe a player that Maresca would like, and we've already heard that Maresca has kind of a fondness or kind of appreciates Liam Delap and maybe could see him as that player. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The other attacking area is left wing. We've heard Jamie Gittens from Borussia Dortmund and Nico Williams from Bilbao, who obviously lit it up in the Euros during the summer too. And this kind of all links wide players, in kind of that area with McCallum Mudryk. We suspect the conclusion of his potential ban and this test coming back is going to be received in the next few weeks, and we will firmly know whether Mudryk is going to be out for a long period of time. Now, if he is out for a long period of time, separate point on this, I think with Mudryk, I think with Chelsea, like I was speaking to actually my dad the other day. We were just having a general Chelsea catch up and chat, and sort of saying, I find it a little bit weird that there isn't in modern football a kind of clause in players' contracts to kind of terminate them. Because if Mudryk really is banned for about 4 years, how do Chelsea sell that player? How do you resolve that player? You can't have a player on his sort of, I know he isn't on the biggest wages, but still a decent chunk of wages, be sat there for 4 years doing absolutely nothing. Who's going to buy that player? Who's going to buy a player and then have to wait for a long period of time to get him on the pitch? It's a really tricky situation, and that's why I think Chelsea may end up being quite brutal in the situation with that. But that's a separate, can of worms. But I think in terms of a wide player, the reason why this actually is spoken about a little bit more concretely is because when you actually look at the numbers, and this is something that Matt Law brought up too, the actual numbers of Chelsea's wide players this year, despite the attack being better than bad, obviously Chelsea have scored a lot of goals this year. Their goals in terms of ranking them upwards of top Premier League attacks is highly respectable. However, in that wide area, especially in the past few weeks when Chelsea's form has dipped, it's become more of an evident problem when Jackson and Palmer especially are not providing the output. So Jadon Sancho, 2 goals in 14 games. Pedro Neto is actually, I think, the worst in terms of output, 1 goal in 17. Noni Madueke is the best with 5 goals in 18, but you have to factor in that 3 of those goals was in that game against Wolves, the second game of the season back in August. So overall, the output has not been as good as it should have been. I think, Sancho has impressed in terms of his creativity, but his lack of shooting, his lack of end products, especially in front of goal, has not been great. Pedro Neto, I've been a fan of, but that 1 goal was a brilliant goal against Arsenal, but overall hasn't exactly lit the world on fire, given this was, compared to other players we've bought, a player in their prime who has played in the Premier League for a number of years. You can't really use the argument, he's very raw, he's very erratic, he needs years to get better. Neto is someone who has also avoided injury, which has been a problem in his career before, so he's had a lot of time to actually impress on the pitch. He sadly hasn't put the goals in that you would have maybe expected. And Madueke is a player, obviously, that has had some off-field issues, or at least problems with his discipline or problems with his performances, clearly in the eyes of Enzo Maresca. But I still think he's a player that is worthy of more time. It's just whether that relationship with Maresca and him is going to get any better. So the argument of signing someone in this wide area makes a lot more sense, actually, when you look at those numbers. And if Chelsea want to get to a stage where they're competing for a Premier League title, obviously our output has to be a lot better, because when inevitably your centre forward and Cole Palmer dips and drops and doesn't score for a couple games, who else is stepping up? And that maybe has been exposed in recent weeks a lot more. Enzo Fernandez went through a little goal scoring spell that has ended now. You need it from a variety of areas, and clearly in recent years, you look at Man City, you look at Liverpool. All right, you still have maybe one outstanding leading player in that outstanding player, Mohamed Salah, Erling Haaland with Man City. But you have a variety of goals still, a respectable number of goals coming from a variety of areas. And that's what Liverpool have had. That's what Man City have had. Even in recent years, that's what Arsenal have had. It's really, for them, it's really gone down in the past few seasons. But I think about that first season when they went for the title under Arteta, they did have a variety of attacking threat. So you need that if you're going to seriously sustain a Premier League title challenge. Nico Williams, for me, has always been the outstanding one. But that was shot down very quickly in the summer because Chelsea didn't want to pay his, in their eyes, exorbitant wages. I sort of fire back and go, if you're going to sign serious players, I think there is just an understanding you've got to sign them with serious wages. That's just, they've had to accept that with Cole Palmer eventually. If you want to keep serious players, if you want to buy serious players, unless the market significantly changes, you're going to have to be paying someone over 100 grand a week. And whatever general football fans feel about that being silly, which it probably is, and has been for a long period of time, that is the game. If you want to compete seriously in the market, you have to understand that. Liverpool have a high wage bill, Arsenal have a high wage bill, City have a high wage bill. Again, there is a financial reality that comes with that Chelsea have done in the past, seem a little bit more reticent now. I do want to bring up a name that could have been helping Chelsea a lot more if they hadn't sold him for a ridiculously stupid low fee, and that is also Callum Hudson-Odoi, who we sold for £3 million. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, £3 million. I'll say that again, £3 million to Nottingham Forest in 2023. And 2022, 2023, I'm trying to remember what. Yeah, I think it was last season, was it? 2023. And he's obviously now hit some brilliant form and has been a really good addition to a very impressive Forest side under Nuno Espirito Santo, who are above Chelsea in the Premier League at the moment. So that still feels like a stupid move for me, but that's the past. Are Chelsea going to go back and buy Callum Hudson-Odoi? I wouldn't put it past Chelsea buying our previous players who we thought were not good enough, but now we have to sign them on a premium. Again, I'll hear your thoughts in the comments below. Am I going overboard with kind of having a go on my players this year? Because about a month ago, we were talking about how productive this attack was, but then when you actually look at those players in isolation, it hasn't been as impressive. And with either of those names, Jamie Gittens is obviously impressed at Dortmund, but more so, Nico Williams has been kind of the standout name, I think, in this area for a long period of time, and I think would be a statement signing. I think would be someone who elevates our attack in a big way. That's just my personal opinion. The final thing is Carney Chukwuemeka being loaned to Borussia Dortmund, or at least having Dortmund interest. Obviously, it's not close to happening yet. Carney is a player that I think we've just handled terribly. And no one can accuse me of academy bias, because Carney Chukwuemeka is not a Cobham product. We bought him in the first summer of the Clear Lake ownership from Aston Villa. He's an Aston Villa academy product. And obviously had some injury problems, kind of bided his time. But I think for spells last season under Pochettino really showed his quality. And I think is a very, very talented midfielder. Can play as a number 10, can play a little bit higher up the pitch, but I think also could play as a very effective number 8. Even earlier in his career, played as kind of a deep line playmaker. I could see that as well, development for him in his career. And I just find it a little bit bizarre the way we've handled Carney. I think it's a real waste of a really exciting talent. And I actually think a lot of people agree with that sentiment, is just, especially when you factor in Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. You know, those minutes that Kiernan got earlier in the season, we should not have bought him. Just give those minutes to Carney Chukwuemeka. I think it would have been way more beneficial for the player, but also for Chelsea. And it's no shock to me the level of club that is coming in for Carney Chukwuemeka, because I think there is just a wide, clearly appreciation for him as a talent and what he could still become. I think Dortmund would be a Champions League level club, Bundesliga football. I think that'd be an amazing loan move for him. Another place he could be going is Strasbourg, but I can't see that happening, because Chelsea already have 3 players on loan at Strasbourg, and it would mean us recalling one. And reports have been that we're not going to recall Georgia Petrovic, we're not going to recall Andre Santos, and I think the third player is Caleb Wiley, who we bought from MLS in the summer. So then you've got a real problem on your hands. If you're not going to loan any of those players back, you have to loan Carney to somewhere else. And I actually think just for his career, I think he's at a good enough stage in his career, and he's at a stage of his career really where Chelsea clearly don't want him. I think him going to Dortmund makes a lot more sense for his own career. And I think he's a high level. He needs to start being at a stage, and I think he's good enough to start playing top tier football somewhere consistently. And sure, you can argue Strasbourg provides that, but going to Strasbourg kind of feels like, well, you're kind of still in the Chelsea mix. And again, if we're not bringing back Andre Santos, then that's a no-go. So Chelsea would have to bring back someone. I think in goalkeeper, there could be an argument to bring back Georgia Petrovic. That's an older issue. Santos, we talked about it. I think it's a little bit strange that Chelsea are not even considering bringing back Andre Santos. So Strasbourg being brought out very quickly after the Dortmund links felt a little bit convenient to me, because there's an obvious problem there that I just can't see being resolved. So I could see him going to Borussia Dortmund, and I think that'd be an amazing move for him. I just think it's a real shame that we haven't looked at Carney more. I think that's an oversight from Enzo Maresca. I find it weird that it's a club thing as well, because, you know, it's not like this is a player that was bought before they arrived. This was a player bought literally in their first window. And in terms of the type of players Chelsea have been investing in, a player who is young, dynamic, could get significantly better. And actually, if you're being really clinical and, you know, a little bit soulless, but, you know, if you're looking from a purely financial point of view, could make you a lot of money if you develop them. Carney fits that mold perfectly. So I just, you know, compared to Dewsbury Hall, it makes so little sense the way we've handled Chukwuemeka, and I think Chelsea are really going to regret letting him go, because I think he might have proven to be a really substantial and effective and talented player in either an attack or a central midfield role, when actually our central midfield looks a little bit weak at the moment. I think we have done a really dumb thing with the handling of Carney, especially when you sold Conor Gallagher. I just thought, naturally then surely Carney gets more minutes, but that hasn't been the case. And I just find it utterly bizarre. So that is it for Friday's edition of Morning Blues. I'll be back later for the Morecambe preview and team selector. Thank you again for watching, for listening, for supporting. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.